Welcome to the Drivers Republic podcast, brought to you in association with Dundee Motors, Ireland's favourite car buying website. With the widest selection of cars from certified trust dealerships, most Irish drivers find their next car on Dundee. Hello there, Paddy.
Hello there, Mark. How are you? Yeah, hello from Cork.
Hello from Dublin. We've issues with why doesn't Cork like the BMW M5, Paddy?
Why have they not sold any yet?
One.
I've
So I
actually
don't know
and
what's.
I've seen one down here. I also I meant to tell you about this. There's a guy, an absolute hero in my village. I live in a small village in East Cork, and he is an elderly man who's, I'd say, could be into his 80s, and he drives a brand new Ford Focus ST, lurid green, but he drives it everywhere at 15 kilometers per hour. And I mean 15 kilometers per hour.
Has he traded it in for an M5? No.
Maybe he's the M5 is an order, but this guy, honest to God, because this car, I don't think it's ever got out of first gear. It's screaming revs. I don't know, did he win it in a raffle or something? But yeah, be very cautious if you're buying a second an ST, and it's pretty much brand new, and yeah, just be cautious if you're purchasing a used ST from Cork, because it mightn't be the best second-hand buy.
Has he stopped to chat, or have you just seen him?
No, I'm just habitually stuck behind him as I go to the local petrol station, as he goes for his morning paper at actual walking speed.
That is incredible. And that's a good lesson as to why sometimes a car with low mileage is not not always a good buy. Because
Yeah, one careful owner.
Yeah. I mean, late last year I went looking at a beautiful black Boxster S. It was in the north.
Nice.
And I went up via Warren Point, which is, if anyone's ever been up to Warren Point, you take the coastal drive. Oh, it's absolutely beautiful. And I've been chatting to this guy back and forth, and it turns out he was a butcher. He owned his butcher's shop, and he liked his cars. But he had acquired a Category D, which I think is now a Category N, write-off Boxster. And there was only 15,000 kilometers on this. It was a 07. And I went up, and I shouldn't have done this, but like I said to him straight away, I can't believe this is in the condition it's in, because it was immaculate. And apparently what had happened to it early in its life, it was in a Porsche dealership. One of those fire sprinkler things went off, soaked the car, and it was a brand new Boxster at the time, and it was a write-off.
With the roof open in the showroom,
I guess. Roof open. Yeah. So it was in a Porsche dealership in Essex. It made its way to the north. Wright's Crash Repair, one of their staff bought it because they would be able to put that back together. Put it right, boom, boom. And then it went into this gentleman's hands. And it was like absolutely immaculate. But the point was, and I didn't buy it in the end because I was just a bit nervous of all the ECU
what if
components and what if
warranties and stuff.
Yeah, but the point was it actually hadn't had any real service history, even because there was so little mileage on it. So I'd probably nearly rather buy something that has a few miles on it that has been given some TLC rather than a Sunday car.
Yeah, you're dead right. We've a bit to cover in the news, but what are we going to do? Tell people what we're going to do after the break. I think we're going to do some proper consumer information for once.
Yes, for once. Well, look, we are probably strangely the voice of, what would you say, knowledge, the voices of knowledge for people that really aren't sure where to go, what to buy, if they should buy at all. So we'll try and help you.
Yeah, like I think, if you go to a dinner party or if you go to the pub, generally if the chat turns to cars, people turn to us and go, I was thinking of getting one of these. What do you think? So we're going to expand on that a little bit today, and we're going to go through all of the cars that we think you should buy. Well, it's the ones we would buy, at least, in all across the various categories. So everything from super mini right up to luxury EV, we're going to cover those off today. But where we're going to start this week is of course with what we've been driving, and more specifically what Mark's been driving. One video I saw you uploaded earlier in the week, stunning looking car, is the Alfa Romeo Junior. Now, Alfa always make pretty cars. In the past, they weren't always the best, but this thing looks good. Was it any use?
Yeah, it was. It was used, and I'd driven the normal electric version of the Junior. So this is the Junior Veloce.
Oh,
So you have the normal version of the car. There is a hybrid version of that car coming as well, but also the Veloce version is quite a bit different. It has 276 brake horsepower through the front wheels,
right.
254 pounds per foot of torque. So you're kind of talking. You're at kind of Golf GTI, a little bit more than the Golf GTI, which is always the benchmark for hot hatches. It has a Torsen limited slip. They've lowered it. They've put a wider track on it. They've put better brakes on it. They haven't just Stellantis being they haven't just put more power onto the standard car and said be grand. So it's got a quicker steering rack, um, 20-inch wheels, better damping.
And is
Probably
this in the sort of Scalextric's model of a different car underneath that they've put an Alpha body on? Does it share any commonalities with some of the Stellantis EVs?
it does in lots of ways. Like it has the 100 kilowatt DC charging. It has the 51 kilowatt hour battery. So yeah, that kind of stuff is there. All the switch gear is there. In fact, if anyone who did see the video I did of the original Junior this year, it even has the same bucket seats because someone had gone mad on the extras in this car. The bucket seats are about €5,000. The difference with this one is there's a launch version which is €56,000, and there's a €51,000 version which has a few little less bits on it. But it's just over 1,500 kilos, which is not light, but by EV hatch it's light.
For me, it's one of the prettiest smaller EVs on the market today. It's just a gorgeous looking thing, and Alpha always get that right. Um, Really interesting looking car, and this was a car that was due to be called something else. This was originally the Alfa Romeo Milano, if I'm not mistaken.
Milano, yes. So
What
literally
happened?
the night or the night before it was meant to be launched to the world, the Italian government stepped in and said, "This car is not Italian. You can't call it Milano." And I think it's a bit like you can't call champagne unless it's from specific regions of Francais. You can't call a Waterford Blah unless it's baked in Waterford.
Right.
And I don't know what the actual rules are in Italy, but you can't call something and make it sound quintessentially Italian if it's made in Poland, which the Junior is.
And
So,
look, you've been looking at car registrations, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. Do you think this is going to make Alfa Romeo clock up a few numbers this year?
well, look, Alfa are in a precarious place. I don't think they'll ever be sold off by Stellantis. I really don't. I think, like, having been in Turin, when you drive past their headquarters, it's nearly one of the centre badges over their door. So it would be mad to think of them doing that. And Ireland is not going to, inverted commas, save Alfa Romeo with our sales figures. But it is a car that Alfa apparently, not this Veloce version, just the standard Junior, they're apparently counting on a younger audience who maybe have never had an Alfa Romeo before. They don't care about the heritage as such, so the fact that it doesn't have a twin spark isn't going to keep them up at night. Uh, and it would maybe get them into this car. But like a lot of cars, particularly in that size, it's too expensive. Like the entry one is 30 odd, fine. But as soon as you put anything, you upgrade your wheels, you put on the nice red colour, you're getting close to 40 grand.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, that'll be a lot cheaper in the continent. Is it a car that's going to save Alpha? I just don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, they've had a lot of near misses, and I don't know if this is going to be a huge success for them. But look, a pretty car, and if you want to go and check out Mark's review, Nobby on Cars on YouTube, and you can get the full lowdown on that. Another car that you are driving this week is the Dacia Bigster. What is that? What is a Bigster?
A Bigster is not a seven-seater, as you might think by the name of it. So you still have the jogger for that. The Bigster is a car that I suppose, in a way, is trying to put it up to something like the Tiguan from VW. Now, it was announced in Europe that it'd be from €25,000. That probably means in Ireland from 29, 30. But then that won't be the extreme version, which is the one you always want in Dacia, which could be, I don't know, even if it is still mid to high 30s, that's still a lot cheaper than some of the competition. But when you go into your dealership and you work out the monthly figures and the residual values, will a Tiguan actually be much more expensive per month than a Bigster? I don't know. Um, it still feels very much like I saw it last, I don't know, October, September in Berlin, and it still feels very much like the Duster up the front. There's no huge big differences in the materials or anything like that. It's just there are some nicer bits, there's nicer colors. As I mentioned to you last week, you can get a glass roof on it. Um, so we've been driving that around Marseille this week, and have a look at the YouTube video when it comes out for more details.
Yeah, there's a
But
lovely sort of
yeah,
Tonka toy look to this thing, and that's the appeal for me on it. I just think it's a really really good looking chunky utilitarian vehicle. Hopefully it now and you can go over to see Mark's review. Hopefully it lives up to the looks at least.
yeah, like they reckon it's 20% below average price of the C SUV segment. That's essentially where they're going, and they say it's a car that they hadn't really tapped into before in terms of segment. And they feel like they've kind of conquered B segment cars now. So Dacia's next strategy is to impede in the C category next, and it sounds like this is the first of a few.
Sorry, no, I want a really big jacked up jogger. That's what I want. A jogger on stilts. That's
Yeah,
that's the
it's
that's the dream for me.
and I think to protect Jogger, that's the reason this isn't a seven seater, because it's quite a large car. Like lengthwise, it is 4.57 meters
Right.
long. It's
Okay.
got a wheelbase of 2.7, so that's Kia Sportage type wheelbase. 1.8 meters wide, and a 667 liter boot. So that's what people I think were wondering, why is there not two seats in there? It's quite a large boot.
Yes, to protect that jogger, I guess. Yeah, look, interesting one. Another car you've been driving this week, the Xpeng, or I thought it was Xiaopeng, but it's Xpeng for Ireland anyway. G6, another mid-size EV, 45-ish grand SUV in the market. How did you fare with that?
Mixed bag, good car. It's essentially there to take shots at the Model Y. Certainly the last Model Y, because there is a new one imminent. Um, I thought the software was a little bit overwhelming, and that's coming from someone who does like software in cars. Like, for example, even trying to find the equalizer for the speakers was a challenge, and I actually didn't manage to find it in the week I was
Okay.
driving the car. There is a voice activated feature which does really help, and you can say, "Hey, Xpeng," and this little. Remember the paperclip man on Microsoft Windows?
Yes,
It's kind of like a
it
robot
appears.
version of that. Yeah, minus the paperclip. So that pops up. That does everything from turn on your headlights, your heated seats, change the radio station, you name it. And there are rumors that, and there are only rumors that, uh, some years ago they kind of either bought over some people from Tesla, or just had an awful lot of looking at their software, because there are bits of the car that you kind of go, that is like it has Sentry mode like Tesla. It has that
Right.
little
Okay.
lane screen with your speed on the top, just like Tesla. Except you can't move it over to the right hand side of the screen, which would be more native to right-hand drive cars such as ourselves. Um, Look, it's a good price. The delivery charge is fairly substantial on it. It's almost €3,000 from MSL. That does include a service pack, which I think gets you two services during the course of your 3 years, or whatever. It's got 258 brake horsepower. Sorry, 251 or 280 something for the long wheel. Sorry, the long range version. They're all rear wheel drive in Ireland. In this part of the world, there is an all wheel drive version. Um, Compared to maybe the obvious one, which is BYD, I thought the interior was actually a little bit nicer, believe it or
Okay.
not. This
Right.
had the white interior, including white seatbelts. So from a dirt point of view, some people aren't into that. Um, Rode pretty well. It definitely rides better than the last Model Y, but apparently that is night and day. The new version, they have started from the ground up with that. I asked some people who have bought these cars how long did it take the app to be set up, because I was able to scan the QR code. A lot of press cars, you don't get the functionality of apps when you test them, because they've only got maybe one login or whatever. Now, in fairness to some brands, anytime I've asked, they do it. I still get notifications about my Skoda Elrock all the time. It's even named after me. But so I couldn't actually get in, even though I was able to QR the app, and then it just says, "Oh, you'll be able to access this," but it doesn't move beyond that. And I remember reading that about BYD as well. It took quite a long time for the app to be functional on customers' phones after they'd bought their cars. Like, we're talking weeks.
Wow. Okay.
So I don't know what that is and why. But look, another player in that segment. God knows there's enough competition there.
Yeah, just how people are going to start telling these apart, though. I mean,
Yeah,
I pity the consumer who's trying to get their head around these things, these new entrants.
I mean the front of it's okay. The rear is memorable in maybe not as good a way. But look, everything felt premium in it. I love the way, literally the only difference between the long range version and the standard is how far it goes. Everything else spec wise is exactly the same. You don't get any extra gear. You're literally paying for a bigger battery. The entry car is an LFP
Right.
battery, which is a little bit cheaper. That also probably helps with the cost of the price of it. And look, a solid thing. I just, especially at 50, there's more familiar names out there to people.
Yeah, I guess any word on warranties and things like that. Anything special about those?
So warranty is 5 years or 160,000 kilometers on the car.
Standard enough.
And then what I thought was odd was it doesn't increase. So you get 8 years on the battery or also 160. Now BYD are doing bigger. Certainly they're covering more.
200,000 kilometers.
Yeah. So I thought that was an interesting one because I suppose I don't know actually how much of a competitor they are in China. Like, they're not as big as BYD. They're only around 10 years. But I just thought it was, so NVIDIA chips, for anyone who likes dabbling in the stock market, car is powered by them. So it's really tech heavy.
Okay.
Which means,
Interesting. Video up on that yet?
videos up on that, yeah. I will say one thing about Xpeng. People are very interested in them. That's the second video I've put up featuring an Xpeng, and they just kind of take off. I'd nearly say they're as good
Great.
for views as Skoda.
Bad news this week from Audi. 7,500 jobs are being cut. They've announced a big enough restructure, so they'll lose 7,500 jobs by 2029. They are calling it a socially responsible reduction. They're saying there won't be any mass layoffs. It'll happen gradually, and there'll be job security for others. The remaining workforce, they say, are protected until 2033. Why is this happening? It's apparently to cut costs, boost efficiency, and focus on electric mobility. Some of their executives as well are taking cuts. Bonuses and profit sharing are to be adjusted as well. This is a bit of a sign of the times, and we've seen this from Volkswagen and now Audi as well following suit.
What is a socially responsible cut of jobs? Like, what's how are they being responsible?
Well, I mean, that's it's nice PR language, all right.
Is that?
I think they will. Yeah, it is. It's a good spin. We can only imagine that it's doing it in a careful way, and they're trying to spread it out over various elements of the business and not dramatically doing it. But yeah, look, it is a little bit of a spin
I mean,
because they have to reduce costs.
yeah, it is. I mean, it's nice to hear that some of the big wigs are taking a bit of a haircut as well. But look, I mean, literally off the back of us talking about Xpeng or Xiaopeng, these sales have to come from somewhere. And I'm not saying they're a direct competitor of Audi. I don't really think they are. But when you look at worldwide Audi sales, they are in decline and have
Mm.
been for quite a number of years.
And we've seen plant closures in Belgium and the likes, and they're saying it'll save them over $1 billion per year.
Wow.
And future-proof their German plants. Now, that remains to be seen. But yeah, it's strange to see such a big brand like that. And we would have always seen Audi as a huge powerhouse, and definitely been affected by the move to EVs and the influx of brands like Xiaopeng.
Yep, and look, I mean, I'm a big fan of Audis. Really, I think that, like, there can be a little bit tight in what they give you as standard spec, but the e-tron GT is a cracking car. Is
Yeah, and that A6 e-tron I just gave back as
Yeah.
well. Wow, I was tears in my eyes this morning handing that car back. But
But,
but I did have €20,000 of options on it though.
oh my god. But there's probably not a huge amount of money selling e-tron GTs compared to, or maybe there are. I don't know. But this is like, we've had the mess of so I think they're rolling back on the model designation. The idea was, they announced a few months ago that all the even numbers are going to be electric and all the odd numbers are going to be internal combustion. And now they've kind of said, which is, I think, why we got the A5, the A4 turning into the A5. But now they're saying, oh yeah, I'm not sure about that.
Because the A6 was supposed to be the A7, and then the electric was, the A6 e-tron, but the A6 Avant was supposed to be the A7,
And
and
what was
they rolled
happening
back on that.
to the actual A7? That's a beautiful car.
I know.
Love it.
Pretty thing. Lots of nice ones secondhand as well, if you're brave enough.
Yeah.
But yeah, pretty car. More news this week as well, Mark, and I don't know, was it Sign of the Times? Over the weekend, a Tesla dealership in Belfast was vandalised. 20 vehicles were damaged. Wing mirrors smashed, dents in the bodywork. And we can only imagine that it was an anti Elon Musk action. Is this a start of a backlash against Tesla?
So are these far right people protesting at the far right, or who are these people?
Well, look, I mean, it could be just plain old being a courier, but they don't need much of an excuse to
Well,
smash up some stuff.
you know what? You could be right on that. It could just be a coincidence. Obviously, there's a lot of resistance online, at least with Tesla over Elon Musk. I think he's definitely a PR problem for the company right now. So
In any other company, there'd be an extraordinary board meeting, and
yeah,
the boss would be ousted. But it doesn't look like that's something that is likely in Tesla's case.
no, I don't think that's going to happen. It's it's very strange, but on the targeting of a dealership, I mean that is kind of crazy. It's
That's mindless violence,
yeah,
of course. But
like
I mean, I just wonder would it have happened necessarily, in the current climate and another brand, or maybe it's a coincidence. But yeah, certainly a sign that there's a bit of disquiet around that brand.
I'd love to hear from someone actually, and feel free to email us and let us know. driversrepublicpodcast@gmail.com. It can be anonymous if you like. We don't have to read out names, but like, if you own a Tesla, has it made you question your purchase? Would you maybe like to, if you could, get rid of the car just because of, not that it's a bad car or anything, but just by association? You're sitting there at the traffic lights and you're wondering, are people judging you, or maybe you really don't give a damn? And like, I do stand on the side of judging people because of a purchase they've made is kind of crazy. Yes,
Yeah, and we haven't seen in Ireland the full impact of sales yet. Like, generally, their deliveries are slightly odd times, so it remains to be seen whether Irish consumers are backing away from them to the extent that they are in countries like Germany, which have seen really massive drops in Tesla sales.
and so much unrest in the world right now. It's very hard to compare the Elon sentiment to war, for example, but certainly the people he's now involved in. But I think the Irish people are not very tolerant, probably because of the troubles we had to endure for so long, and probably more so our friends across the border. That when any of this kind of stuff kicks off, when any sort of hatred or racism surfaces, or in Elon's cases has been alleged, supporting absolutely craziness. I don't think we're not very accepting anymore of it.
No, tolerance levels have gone, and maybe that's a good thing in some cases, but I think it can be taken to the extreme, and I think we're seeing some examples of that for sure. So look, I mean, let us know. It would be good to hear from some Tesla owners. What do you think? Let us know.
I mean,
driversrepublicpodcast@gmail.com.
to add insult, then Elon is in a photograph with Conor McGregor and Donald Trump, and I think a lot of people on Paddy's night were looking at that picture, going, "Oh Jesus Christ, what is going on?"
Yeah.
So
it's a podcast for another day. Well, look, coming up after the break, put the kettle on, because Mark and I are going to pull up a couple of stools and discuss what are the best cars in every class, from small to big, from family to luxury SUV. We're going to figure that out. So join us after the break. Welcome back to the Drivers Republic podcast, brought to you in association with Dundeal Motors, Ireland's favourite website for car buying. With more certified trusted dealers than anywhere else, you're sure to find the right car for you on dundeal.ie.
fair play to Dundeal. We love your work. We're heading towards the end of March, and I'd imagine new car sales. Now we've already like January is always the biggest month, but I feel like especially with our number plates, maybe as well the way the year splits in two, people are probably now already looking to the what are we at now 252 plate, or even in the short term. If you're picking something up or you're thinking about picking something up, it's definitely a window shopping time of cars. And we just thought there's a reason why a lot of the national newspapers every December or January will do a guide to what you should buy, because people obviously needs a little bit of a hand holding in order to try and decipher where should I go. I mean, my thoughts are maybe that, I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, Paddy, people would probably maybe look at a wider list of cars, then they might narrow it down, try and funnel it into something else. As someone once said to me, from what I do on YouTube, which is kind of consumer driven car reviews, people said like I'm much higher up the funnel than you are, and I was like, oh, that's sales talk. Um, but
Yeah.
I suppose people do they come to maybe YouTube for the decisive opinion on maybe the final three cars they've shortlisted it down to, whatever it is.
Well, I think that's and I think that's the benefit of someone like yourself, Mark, who has an opinion. Unfortunately, when there's an awful lot of content out there that doesn't have an opinion, and you can certainly watch stuff that's a bit of an online brochure, and that's fine at a superficial level. But people who are investing into a new car need, they need someone to say, look, this is what's good, this is what's bad, I don't like this, I like that, this could be better. And that's the benefit of proper consumer motoring journalism. So yeah, I think, there's so much information out there. People do their research now on the internet at home. And as Lee Fitzpatrick said on the podcast a couple of weeks ago, by the time it gets to him, most people have a fair idea, and from watching videos like yours, what they want, an idea what they want. But with so much choice out there and with all of these new entrants coming into the market, it's not hard to see why people would be confused. So Mark and I thought it would be an interesting exercise to really go through some of the segments and talk about some of the cars that we think, at least, are the ones you should be paying attention to.
It doesn't all have to be EV, by the way, and it won't be. And it's interesting when we'll kind of chat through it. But some of the segments now in Ireland are really heavily based on either plug-in hybrid or full electric. Not far off 50% of the share of a segment, which is you only hear
Wow.
the top line figure of 16% of car sales are BEVs in Ireland as of 2025 so far. But actually, when you fine tune it, it can be a lot higher in a particular segment of car. So I don't know where you want to start. I mean, look, I've waxed lyrical about the Inster a lot. It was only when it was
Well, yeah, let's start small, I suppose. For people who are, we're talking new cars here, and we can do used cars another day. But for people who are starting off at a lower budget, if you like, or generally that we would have called it the city car or super mini segment, but there are now cars which are cheaper than there were 2 or 3 years ago. The entry point for a new car now is an awful lot cheaper than it was 3 years ago, for example. So, Mark, for the small car segment, so traditionally people would have looked at cars like Ford Fiestas, in the past Fiat Puntos, Toyota Yaris's. That water has been muddied now by a raft of new small EVs, for example, but there's still a mix of some of the traditional ones out there. So you've mentioned the Inster. Why has that made such an impact?
I think it's a good example of how you can make affordable mobility without having to make it feel really, really cheap. And the powertrain in it is almost irrelevant for me. Yes, it is electric, but it's got a decent range for the size of the car. It's the clever use of space, relative affordability. Now, it has to be said, not the cheapest interest rate. When you actually do a calculation, and I saw a good old pal of ours, Blake Boland, do this exercise online, and he compared the price of the Dacia Spring to the Inster, and the finance rate was so much lower on the Spring. The monthly figures were vastly, vastly different, even though they were kind of closely ish priced. So it's not even that it is actually the most affordable car on the market. It's not, but it's just the whole package that I think is really, really good. It's good to drive. It's fun. You can do lots of things by dropping the seats, making like it hasn't got the biggest boot in the world, but it makes up for it in the rear leg room. And if you do need a bigger boot on a given day, it has that flexibility.
And you have to remember as well what these cars were going to do. What's their purpose? Generally, they would have been for nipping around town, dropping the kids to school, and going and doing a small bit of shopping, not necessarily crossing the country 4 times a week.
No.
So for that sort of size of car, in some cases they might have been bought by younger drivers. In some cases, even the other end of the extreme, by older drivers who, want something that's easy to use, easy to get in and out of. And for that, the Inster just does such a good job. It
Mm.
really does.
And I've been watching Mooney's Long Mile. A friend of mine works there for donkey's years, so I follow him on Instagram, and I've been looking at the type of customer who's buying an Insta, and it is a mix. It's young people, it's couples, it's definitely retired people. Hyundai said themselves it was a car that they felt would get younger customers into it, just probably purely because of the price. But I suppose it's a bit like maybe when you get to a certain age in life and you go, I don't need this house anymore, I'm going to downsize it. Maybe the same thing catches people's eyes in an Insta. I do think overall, though, Irish people are we a bit snobby about small cars? Do you think?
I don't know. I'm weirdly, for someone my size, like a small car. I always did, and I'm very much someone who thinks, right, buy what you need rather than what you
Mm.
think you need. And for some of these small, I like a really well equipped small car and a nicely put together small car, and the level, the bar has really been raised with cars like this. Um, but so another one which caught my eye recently, and I spent some time in, was the Suzuki Swift. Not on paper a very sexy car, but for the money, for what you get for the price,
Well,
absolutely astonishing equipment levels.
as you said, you like a well-equipped car. That car has absolutely everything that anyone needs. You've got climate control, you've got blind spot, you've got electric everything. You've got, I think you get alloy wheels if you want. It's got a lovely manual gearbox in it. It's a cracking little car to drive. And
Yeah,
again, the
sips
top
sips fuel. Yeah,
the top spec is 22.
yeah, 22 grand, and it has literally everything on it, and stuff that you don't see in some sort of medium premium
It's
cars.
got heated
So
seats. Yeah.
really, really impressive little thing. Yeah, yeah, super, super little. Yeah, yeah. I did say that the only my only issue with the heated seats in the Swift is it has one
Yeah.
setting, which is nuclear. So you're, it's either freezing cold or
It's
you're on fire.
all or
So yeah,
nothing.
I'm not sure about that.
But you know what?
Yeah,
Suzuki,
it really is.
they were one of the few brands as well during COVID who didn't increase their prices. Their prices stayed the same.
Yeah, and look, and I think that their sales are okay as well as a result. It's funny though, are cars like these and the ones we've mentioned, are they starting to eat into the likes of the more traditional ones that we used to talk about, the likes of the Skoda Fabia and the Toyota Yaris, which are cars which are good, but have got a lot more expensive.
Well, they have got a lot more expensive, but the Yaris is still top of the pile here in Ireland. That's not the Yaris Cross, by the way. That's a separate category. Just the Yaris, then the Sandero, the Hyundai i20, the VW Polo, and yes, of Corsa. For anyone who hated that ad last year,
Oh,
the Corsa.
did you do that ad?
I did not do that ad. No, no. In fact, Ireland,
Okay, I wanted to blame you for that.
the Irish marketing department didn't do that ad. I thought they did. I think that was a kind of wider Stellantis ad, but they made it their own. And do you know what? I mean, the Corsa is actually one of the more expensive ones in there. The Sandero probably offering people a lot of value. I'd imagine though a Yaris is just, if you have a Yaris and you like it, you're just going to go back into your Toyota dealership and go, "Can I have another one of them, please?"
Of course you are, and you're probably on your fourth or fifth in some cases because people go back for those, and once you get into one, and I haven't driven one in a while, but once you get into one, you go, oh yeah, it does make sense. Everything works really well. The maintenance is going to be absolutely painless. The ownership is going to be painless. Your dealership is going to give you a brilliant price when you go back after 3 years and make it super easy to jump into another one. So yeah, you can see what makes sense. But it's funny because and it's something that makes sense when you look at the sales figures. What we think might be the best cars and what people just go out and buy anyway are often two very different things.
Probably a few things driving that, but I think it is just a case of, as we've just said, it's just a case of what you know. Um, like the Fabia, for example,
Let-
is 22,500 euros. So it's in and around the Suzuki Swift money, it probably feels like a little bit more of a sturdy car.
And the equipment levels are much better than they used to be as well. You know,
Yeah.
you've things like keyless entry and even at entry point and air conditioning and stuff that would have been optional years ago is now standard fit. And on the Fabia, yeah, it's a tried and trusted recipe. And same with the Polo as well. It's one of those ones that if you were if you were a son or daughter and you were charged with putting them into a car, suddenly you start thinking differently, and you'd be thinking Polo or Fabia rather than maybe something a little bit lighter and cheaper.
The Suzuki Swift is light, and that kind of makes it half the fun when you're driving it. Like I was in, I think Marseille again around about a year ago with the launch of that current Suzuki Swift, and Bob Flavin was driving and I was passenger, and we were going through a vineyard on a really twisty road, and we were stuck behind a really smelly diesel Alfa Romeo, and
All right.
Bob was obviously going through some of his health stuff at the time, and I didn't particularly like the smell of fumes either, but he decided that he was going to overtake this Alfa Romeo in the Suzuki Swift. And I can only describe it
Wow.
as I never thought a car could scream quite quite the way a Suzuki Swift does in second and third gear when you were redlining it. Uh,
That
left
is
hand
not a fast car.
left hand drive car. The two of us in it, all our gear in the back, and it felt like it went on forever on the wrong side of the road. But we got there. So I can vouch for its lightness. It doesn't necessarily mean it accelerates that quickly, but it was a fun memory anyway.
Some of the other new models that are arriving now, and lots of people are talking about. Renault 5 is one of the big headline
Yeah,
acts. Um, I haven't driven it yet. You have had a spin. Bound to be a success, that car.
I think it'll do wonders for Renault. To be honest with you, they're not on their own in this, but they have a lot of very similar size cars. Like you have the Rafale, you have the what's the mid one? The I can't even think of the sorry, you have the Arcana, you have the Captor, but there's something else in the middle. Austral, that's the one.
They just sound like Turkish soaps to me or
Yeah,
something. I don't know.
the Renault 5 kind of stands out on its own.
This week on Austral.
Yeah. um, the Renault 5 is very unique, and it's a car that I'm genuinely excited about. I'm kind of excited that maybe people. I also like it's one of the first. The Honda E was a bit retro, but it wasn't really trying to reminisce about something else. The Renault 5 is obviously, for anyone who's again interested in cars, knows what it's trying to be an EV version of. So it'll be interesting to see, will you get older customers who remember those cars buying it, or will you get people who, again, just look at it and go, "Oh, that looks cool, that looks retro," whatever it is.
I think it's going to be all of the above.
I mean, the Ioniq 5 had a bit of that, but it was quite polarizing. Like the Renault 5 is cute, it's small, it looks great in green, great in yellow. It probably look great in lots of colors, to be honest with you. But it's a sense of fun, and that's talking at the start of the podcast, this episode. That's what I kind of really liked about the Alfa Junior, and what I liked about the Renault 5. Yes, they're electric, but it's just trying to bring the fun back. And there was always a lot of fun in a front wheel drive petrol hatchback, and I think EVs can kind of emulate that in a different way, but quite close to what it should have felt like.
Yeah, for me, I think the 5 is. I think I'm going to have one at some stage. So I'm kind of curious to drive it. I hope it doesn't disappoint, because it's a car I've been sort of looking at from afar for a while now. To think, I think it's a perfect replacement to what I have. So
Not to mention the turbo they announced over the weekend. Oh my god!
yeah, for what, a couple of $100,000 that's
Yeah,
huge money, isn't it?
I don't think it's going to sell too many. Just before we move on, it was something like 2,000 newton meters of torque per rear wheel. It was like,
Yeah, there's individual motors on each rear wheel. It's just bonkers. But yeah, fabulous looking thing. Another car which is harking back to its retro past is that Fiat Grande Panda. Another one which will be in and around the sort of mid-20s, I suspect. Harking back to the original Panda, an EV. There will be a hybrid version, I think, is
I
there?
think the EVs are going to come first. It should be here in days, to be honest with you. It's meant to be landing from April. There will be a smaller Panda as well, but this is the Grande Panda, which is still, again, by our standards, quite a small car. Decent to drive. Yes, it should be in around. I'd heard talk of maybe 19 for the petrol version. It definitely wasn't going to be on a par with the EV version, unlike its sibling, the Citroen EC3 or C3. That'll be the same price whether you want petrol or electric. Um, but again, yeah, more of these cars are good.
So, all right, I'm going to put you on the spot. So, of each of these segments, I'm going to ask you, and then I'll give you my view on what you would buy yourself. So, what would you have from this small car segment?
Small car. Are we including Renault 5 there?
Yeah,
I'm very excited about the ID2, but it's not here yet.
it's not here, so it has to be here.
Okay. It'll be a toss up between the Insta and the Renault 5, but I love the look of the Renault 5. I think they've really nailed it.
I agree. Probably Renault 5. Honorable mention to the Dacia Bigster, which is a car we've probably forgotten a little bit about, but wonderful, wonderful car and great value as well if you get a nice FR version. But yeah, for me, Renault 5.
The only thing about the Renault 5 is when you add on the nicer wheels and the nicer color and everything, and the bigger battery, it's going to be a 30 plus car.
In which case the Insta is, eats its lunch all day long,
Yeah.
because you can be 21, 22 for is about pretty much the most you can spend on them, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, and we should give an honourable mention as well to the Kia Picanto. I'd forgot about that car. That car is still selling quite well in Ireland.
It is, and with good reason, because it's a little belter. So yeah, that'd be our top choices in that segment. Moving on though to the small SUV segment, and that's one which is really growing. We love our SUVs in Ireland, as the rest of the world seems to as well. For me, the car that stands out in this one would be the Toyota Yaris Cross. Brilliant little car. I know there's a Lexus version now as well, but the Yaris Cross is just such a good, perfect recipe in terms of small SUV that looks the part, drives really well, easy to park, good enough specification. In that segment, what are your front runners?
Well, first of all, it's a very convoluted segment, I think, these days, because you could have a T-Roc in there and a CHR in there, and
Yeah.
to me, they feel like bigger cars. The Yaris Cross, you haven't sat in the back of one, have you?
I haven't attempted that feat, no.
Okay,
but
'cause-
I'd say it might be tricky.
Well, I was in an Uber, which was a Yaris Cross a couple of weeks ago with Graham Lennox,
Ambitious.
and we were driving around Dusseldorf, and yeah, we were in the back of one of them, and it came back to me when I compared to when I had reviewed it, and I was like, yeah, this sounds familiar, it feels familiar. It's quite tight in the back, even for like small kids, I'd imagine. So my only issue with, and I don't want to pick on the Yaris Cross in particular, but a lot of these titles, even of small SUV, kind of irks me because they're not SUVs, and
No,
we use
tall cars.
They're tall crossover
ish
hatchback cars. But yeah, again, it's leading the way in that area. In fact, that's one of Toyota's real kind of strongholds: Yaris Cross, Corolla Cross,
CHR as well.
There's a lot of and that is a really popular segment in Ireland. So far, we're at over 13,000 cars sold in 2025 from that segment.
But Toyota have, is it 5 or 6 cars in the top 10?
They usually do, yeah.
Some crazy number.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not that many, but it's a huge number. So they are actually knocking it out of the park at the moment for sales.
I don't know if it's the same comparison, but there was upon a time, a bit like BYD and Xpeng coming into the market here. There was a time when Toyota were a newcomer in Ireland, and I think the Japanese are still very impressed with how strong Toyota is as a brand here in Ireland. They're obviously very aware of our market share size. We're not a huge country, but they're, I've heard stories of executives from Toyota coming over here and just being very, very respectful of the O'Mahony family and everyone else who who got involved.
Yeah, well, I mean, they've done an amazing job at marketing the brand for Ireland, and they didn't just hit Dublin; they managed to make it sort of the first choice of every parish in the country at various stages, and they're really part of the Irish fabric, I think.
So yeah, no, we do like a Toyota in this country. Look, the LBX, which you alluded to from Lexus, is a Yaris in a fancier dress, but that car has changed sales for Lexus. Um, I don't know beyond here. I can only assume it's probably been replicated a bit in the UK, but that is a car that has shot up market share for Lexus in Ireland.
Yeah, it's I think it's doubled their sales, if not more,
Yeah,
overnight, because and again, it's one of those sort of really well equipped. It's like a Yaris cross with a really nice finish, and they haven't let the standards drop in terms of the quality. But for some people who don't necessarily need the rear space, who don't you know across the country that much, and who can just spin around town, to do it in a luxury package, is a very appealing prospect for lots of people.
could we fit the Honda HR-V into that category? That'd be a bit of a
Yeah,
stretch.
it's not cheap though, is it? Expensive car.
It's similar enough to the CHR, which has also grown in price. Like the
Yeah.
cheapest CHR now is €40,000.
Wow. Okay. And it's one of those wider conversations about the fact that, are people stopping looking at the list price and looking at the monthlies, and figuring out how much it costs them per month, and going, okay, well, I can afford an extra 30 quid so I can get into the CHR, or the Honda, because, gone are the days where people are going in and going to their credit union necessarily, or their local bank to get a loan for a car. With so much finance around, and with PCP, it's changed the way people look at the price and value of cars, I think.
And all that has done is probably help manufacturers sneak up the prices because people
Yeah.
aren't going, hang on, this was how much 4 years ago? What's happened?
It's only €300 per month though,
Yeah, I know. With
and it's
like
0% finance.
€10,000 deposit. And, yeah, like I was only texting my own dad today. He got an update on his L-Rock on the app, and it said like expected delivery June, and I was like, but the cars just have to be built. It's 3 months, and he said, don't worry about it. It'll help with the balloon payments. It makes it smaller.
You're not going
Oh,
to register in June, are you? You'll wait till July, will you?
well, that's the thing. Yeah,
So would you classify Elrock and
I suppose it
the
is.
likes into that category?
And out of all of those cars, I have to say, I mean, I do like the CHR. I think it's a little bit overpriced for the size of the car. That's the only thing. Like the L-Rock is a far more practical car. It's got a bigger
Hmm.
boot. It's got more rear leg room. So, I was, and obviously it's fully electric, so you can fuel it for next to nothing. So I mean, it's not on our list because it's only literally gone on sale. But I think I would have to pick that out of the small SUV section. But I will say, do not go near a Sportline version because it makes it 50 grand, and the whole point of the L Rock is to not be an Enyaq priced car.
Yeah, but then it shows about how these segments straddle. What do we call the Tucson then? The best-selling car in Ireland for the last 8,000 years. Is that a medium SUV? Is that a small
I
SUV?
think that's a medium. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
isn't it?
interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah, I would say so. So
medium
what?
SUV.
So of the small SUVs, you're saying Elrock, and Kia EV3 doesn't get a mention.
Well, see, the EV3 pops up then
Is a
in.
bigger one, I think, though.
I
If
actually
we're
have.
confused, I pity people out there.
You see, and that's the thing, and the cars are getting bigger. I mean, is the EV3 now? Is it a hatch more than a mid-size?
Yeah, I guess. Look, Kia EV2 would be in this segment, and Kia EV3 would probably be in the bigger
Like
segment.
I would
Although we do have a smaller Skoda coming as well.
Epic, isn't it, or Epic? Epic.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
or Epoch or something. I don't know.
like I would put an EV3, and again, it seems kind of weird maybe because of the price, but an EV3 would be compared to a Golf. Yeah, that's a tough one. And by the way, speaking of the EV3, it's doing very well. So in that category, you have Octavia, best selling, Corolla, then you've Golf, and then EV3, which is not a cheap car compared to those vehicles, which I think is the point.
No.
And the focus comes after EV3. So I don't know, is it spec, is it GT line versus Earth that people are buying? I'd have to ask Cahill at Kia Ireland. But for that car to quickly be in that segment of Octavia, Corolla, Golf, just slightly behind them shows that it obviously is doing very well.
So you're going L Rock. I would probably go Yaris Cross for me in that segment, but yeah, I just have a strange draw for that car, and look, I'm not the only one. Lots of people like it.
I think it is a
It just
strange
seems to
draw,
tick
yeah.
an awful lot of boxes.
You've thrown that one
Yeah,
at me
it
now.
is. Yeah,
Paddy likes the Yaris
yeah,
Cross.
yeah. I do look. I love the Yaris Cross. One of my favorite small cars. Yeah, I do have a slightly odd taste in cars sometimes, and the Yaris Cross is one of my perhaps slightly odd tastes. But no, love it.
We're going to move on to the D segment onwards after this short break. So if you need to go and relieve yourself or whatever you need to do, I'm not talking about you, just people listening. Or you. Whatever.
Thanks.
Back in a second. Welcome back to the Drivers Republic podcast, brought to you in association with Dundeel Motors, Ireland's favourite website for car buying. With more certified trusted dealers than anywhere else, you're sure to find the right car for you on dundeel.ie. If you've just joined us, which you probably haven't because hopefully you're listening since the start, but Paddy has just declared his love for the Toyota Yaris Cross in that segment of cars. His winner, if he was buying with his own money, that's what he thinks you should also buy, which is fair enough.
Yeah, pause for intake of breath, but yeah, no, I'm sticking with that.
Again, are these cars slightly bigger? I don't know. So, like, take the Megane E-Tech, take the Astra, which, to be honest with you, the Opel Astra is a bit of an underdog here. It's not particularly expensive. You can get it in a Tourer if you want the estate.
Yeah.
Some of the versions are barely 30 grand. They are as sexy as your granny, it has to be said. You know? And that's an Opel problem. Or maybe it's just beyond help. Maybe I'm beyond help.
Yeah, I don't know. The Astra is not a bad looking car.
No.
Is it?
I had one last year, white with kind of black alloys with bits of orange on it somewhere. It looked good.
I ended up on holidays and with one as a rental car actually, and I loved it.
I have. You can tell a lot about what car is practical from what people like us book on our holiday cars. So last year I booked a Peugeot Rifter because I could fit everything in the back. That was my rental car. And this year,
but you never get what you order, though, do you?
I did this time, yeah. And then this year, I've actually ordered an Astra Tourer for Gran Canaria in July. I'm hoping I get it because it'll take all the suitcases.
That or the alternative, you'll end up with a jogger or something.
Oh, was it a Logan? Pretty sure I had a Logan before. And I was like, what the hell is this? This is awful. Now, it was good enough for every taxi driver in Lanzarote or wherever it was, but my God, that was a rough car.
If we're looking at the bigger segment though, the D segment, we're looking at cars like Skoda Octavia. Are we in the? Is that we would call that a D segment or C segment?
Well, if the Superb is D segment, then an Octavia has to be.
Yeah, it has to be a C segment. Yeah, it has to be C segment. But this is a car which has been absolutely knocking out of the park for the last couple of years in sales wise.
My neighbour is on, I think, his fourth one, and I was only in it last week, and it's the first time he's ever had a heated steering wheel and heated seats. He's gone from the 1 litre engine to the 1.5 because I don't think they're doing the 1 litre anymore in the Octavia. And they're only subtle enough upgrades for the 25 model year, but he's loving it. So they actually come pretty well spec'd. And again, it's one of those cars that you look at the Skoda website and you go, is that really the price of it? Because, you know, as we've been talking about at length, car prices have gone up, but you can still get a Skoda Octavia for €31,000. I think that's a bit of a bargain.
It's a huge car for that.
Massive
space. Really well built, so reliable, and
600 litre boot
properly. Yeah, it's one of those cars that nearly the answer to every problem is a Skoda Octavia
combi.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we have to add the caveat in of a combi. I drove down today from Dublin in the RS model, petrol, and I was getting 4.7 litres per 100 kilometre all the way down. So even the fast one is fuel efficient and beautiful thing.
Another neighbour of mine has a 2024 black RS. It's one of he proudly told me it's one of the last diesel ones. And I said, that car is going to be worth money in years to come. And he said, I only said that to the missus.
If you want to annoy Ray Leddy, friend of the show, guest number 1, is call it the VRS.
Oh,
If you want to see Ray get exercised.
I was on a trip for the RS last year, and Ray specifically put in the WhatsApp group, it's not called the RS. And he sent on a reason why. And actually, the reason why it is only called the VRS in the UK was because Ford said, ah, ah, ah. And I don't know why it was only in England that
Yeah,
they cared.
because Ford
But I
and
know,
the
but
Ford, I suppose Ford Europe are more focused on the UK, aren't they? But
so that's the reason people in the UK call it the VRS, mate. No, RS.
But even when I was driving down if you remember from the petrol one, you were in it a couple of weeks ago. The V on the steering wheel is in red, and the RS is in almost blacked out. So when you look down at the steering wheel, all you see is a massive V on the bottom of the steering wheel. So it's easy to
Velocity.
get confused.
It's a great all rounder. I mean, look, we have to mention our other cars are available. So you got the Citroen C4 is just being facelifted. The MG4 is in there, but even that feels weird comparing an MG4 to an Octavia. They're just not comparable in so many ways.
No, I just I think we're in agreement here. If you need a sort of medium-sized family car, and unless you're absolutely needed to be an EV, although we have started to see the first sketches of the Octavia EV, you're going to need to just buy a Skoda Octavia, right?
And you get an umbrella in the door. What's not to like?
Yeah. What is not to like?
And a nice
Exactly.
scraper
Fabulous car.
in the fuel cap. So anyway, look, sales are kind of tracking what we're saying. So best selling in this segment in Ireland currently this year: Octavia, Corolla, Golf, EV3, Focus. Now moving on to the D segment. Okay, really popular electric, Model 3, Tesla.
Yeah, it's technological tour de force. Really, the handling is good. The interior is better now than it was. Still a lot going on at the screen. It won't be for everyone, but it's no doubt that they do what they do really well. The charging is excellent. The software works well. It's a better car to drive than the previous one. Hopefully, the same can be said of the Y when that comes. But um, the owner aside, there's a lot to be said for the ownership of a Model 3 or a Tesla, because it's just really simple ownership. And I think for lots of people who weren't car people, that's why they gravitated towards that brand.
Like looking at the website now, and they always kind of fudge their numbers a little bit. Do you want to know the price of the car before savings or after savings? And
It's nonsense. Yeah.
like it's basically, it imagines you were paying for petrol. It takes it off the price. From what I can see on the website, a Model 3 rear wheel drive, no extras, just as it comes, 39,990. So 40 grand. But again,
Yeah, 0% at the moment as well, I think.
it looks like it is, yeah. Yeah. Now it does irk me that they charge how much is that lovely red paint?
1,500 or
Something
something
like that.
or more.
And I love the fact you go onto the website and it goes, right, you owe €250 non-refundable deposit, and you order the car with your card. Done. You could order a Model 3 in about 40 seconds, which is
Oh yeah,
mad.
it's 3 clicks or something, and you're into one. So yeah, it is. But our sales are being hit across Europe. We've talked about that already in the news. But for an ownership experience, if you want a car that has really predictable range, is really fast, the tech is great, then a Model 3 is EV in EV terms a really simple thing to own.
You're only man. Now, next in this segment for sales is Superb, which is a more expensive car. It has had some money taken off the price in the last few weeks. So if you were looking at a Superb a while ago and you thought, oh, go back and have a look because you might be surprised. Followed by Audi A5, which is the new model. Again, is obviously doing well. BYD Seal, and last in the top five in this segment in Ireland is ID7. ID7 has sold nearly 4 times as many as ID5 this year in Ireland.
Yeah, but I'm not sure that's good news for either model, though, is it?
um, I just don't know if they needed the ID5.
It's one of those cars that
It's
answered a question that no one
Yeah,
asked.
it's an ID4 with a spoiler.
Yeah, and then we've seen the Ford Capri as a result, and other
Oh, so that's the
slightly
ID5's
unnecessary
fault.
cars.
let's
Yeah,
let's blame the ID5.
I would have thought we'd have seen more ID7 sales. The Passat was a big seller. There's no Passat anymore. That's the spiritual successor, and the numbers aren't remotely the same. But I know that segment has been chopped up by
Well,
SUVs.
maybe the Superb is getting a bit of love because of no Passat.
And also Skoda have the segment for diesel pretty much wrapped up because there's so few other brands doing diesel now that I think it's 1 in 4, 1 in 3 diesels full stop are Skodas.
Mm.
I know it was 1 in 4 last year. I don't know if it's the same this year.
Now, it's a very hard segment to call because they're all equally different and have merits in some ways. Like the Audi A5, I really liked it. Again, the press car I drove was €90,000. I think it starts from 60 odd. You can't realistically sit here, I don't think either of us can, and say the Model 3 is a far inferior car to the A5 in terms of, driving every day. Is it going to do anything amazingly that the Model 3 can't? And it is, well, it's at least 20 grand cheaper.
It's hard to ignore that. It's an executive car with supercar performance for 40 grand.
The BYD seal, then again, consumer value, you probably have to slot in second. It's not second in terms of sales in Ireland, it's fourth. And the ID7 is coming fifth there. As much as I love that car, I think everyone, including the people of VW, wish it was maybe a 50 grand car.
If it was cheaper, I think they'd certainly be selling more. But there is, it's one of those cars that people want SUVs now, and the estate model was, in Ireland was never going to do huge numbers. We don't love estates here. I don't know why, but yeah, I think the numbers domestically have been disappointing, even though they've done well in across Europe.
So if you don't want the Elon factor, the next best thing is the BYD seal, I think.
It's not a car I've driven, but looks wise and what you get for the money, it's hard to ignore that. And I've certainly recommended it to people, and I know some people who've bought them and they love them. It's a stunning looking car, and it's hard to look past it, I think, in that segment.
You'd have to technically allow the 3 Series in there.
Okay.
It's more of a mid-sized executive, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I would say so, and certainly in terms of price, it is. And those cars have got bigger over the years. A 3 Series used to be a totally different thing, and now it's a much bigger car. Same with its key main rivals. But yeah,
okay,
I guess you'd have to throw it in there.
Well, if you go by what you're saying there, maybe it's not. I don't know. I actually don't know where it exists really in terms of segments anymore.
No, I was going to say, like, if someone who's shopping for a Model 3 or an Audi A5, I would have said is going to be shopping for a 3 Series either.
I'm going to say, leaving all the Elon stuff aside, I think I'll still buy a Model 3.
Right. Okay. I think I'd go seal personally, but look, either of those two cars, you're going to have a good looking car with ton of kit, good range, and you'll be probably a pretty happy guy.
PCP or hire purchase, and rear wheel drive on hire purchase is £604 a month. Now you do have to put 10 grand down. If you don't want to do 10 grand, you can do 6, and it's 617 a month on PCP. But then take off the money you'd be spending on petrol as well. Man maths.
There you go. Perfect.
But
and it's not like you can walk into the dealership and say, "Oh, can you take off the money I'm going to save on petrol? No. I'll give you that later."
But I get you might want to support. You might want to be seen. It's the message it sends out. I get all that, and that comes back to our argument of any other company, he'd be on a nice extended holiday in Barbados.
Yeah, for sure. But that's not likely to happen anytime soon, unfortunately.
Right. What have we got next? Okay, the medium SUV. Tucson has been literally
This is the big one.
Killing it.
It's been number one for 4, I want to say 4, if not 5 years.
Now, the Tucson is not a new phenomenon in Hyundai. It's been out many, many times. A bit like the Kia Sportage. But they were god-awful looking things. They were horrible. Horrible on the inside, horrible on the outside. The last model, if people remember it, it's kind of a boxier version. You'll probably still see some of these as Garda cars, maybe. That was an improvement, but it's only the kind of current gen. I know it's had a bit of a facelift as of last year, but the current gen Tucson was the one that everyone went, "Oh God, that is gorgeous." It has that angel wing grille on the front of it.
Yeah, it has, and people are coming back year after year, and this is runaway leader every year as number one. Now, I think it's a pretty smart model they do insofar as Hyundai order loads of them. They're all in forecourts in November, December, and then people go in and they go, "Do you want a black one or a silver one?" And out you go. So
I think there's a dark petrol blue as well.
Yeah, there is, but it's it's definitely been a huge success. It's funny though, and it was something I was thinking about yesterday. I was in a center car park, and like that, I was looking at a previous generation Kia Sportage. It was a 212, and it looked ancient.
Yeah,
And it's something that that about the Korean ones, and if you're I think if you were driving a previous generation of some Hyundai or Kia in particular, you must feel really annoyed because the new one is radically different by and large than the one that you own. And a car that's only a few years old can end up looking ancient. Whereas, brands like Volkswagen or Skoda, say for example, they mightn't change their car so radically in terms of design. There's always a theme that keeps going and keeps going. A Mark V Golf is not too far from a Mark 7 Golf. But with those brands, the 2121 looked ancient. It looked 100 years old
yeah.
compared to a newer one.
And I only saw 2013 5008 2 days ago, and the exact same. It's like it bears no resemblance to the car it is today. Um, Look, maybe the designers just needed to do more with those cars, and maybe they'll slow down now because where do you like if you're a designer of the Tucson, where do you go next? Surely you'd want to just kind of keep that look of car going because it's been so successful.
But it's the same. Like, think of the Hyundai Santa Fe.
Yeah.
Think of how different the current one looks from the previous one. I mean, they're not even comparable.
And it's the same car underneath.
The, Look, I don't see anything knocking the Tucson off its perch anytime soon.
No, I mean
Do you?
Rav4 is there, Sportage is there, Kodiaq and Tiguan, they're all doing decent numbers. They've nearly 17,000 cars in that segment this year so far. It's probably the biggest segment we've discussed so far, and will be. What I thought was interesting was the Qashqai owned that space for years. And
Yeah.
this year, the Qashqai has sold 881 units. The Tucson has sold 2,500. Now, it is worth pointing out the Tucson registration figures there will also include a large Garda fleet. I don't know how many of that 2,500, but they will be in there.
Yeah, but the same could be said for Skoda with
Oh, no
Kodiaks
doubt.
as well.
No doubt.
There's a big regard of numbers in
I'm
that.
waiting on
What would
the.
you have
By
in
the
the
way,
segment?
I do like a Kodiak.
I've owned a Kodiak. I've had a Kodiak before. I was really impressed with the new Tiguan. There's not much between them, but probably now I'd probably have a Tiguan. So not too far away from where you have. I also honorable mention to the Rav4 PHEV.
That car was doing close to 100 kilometers on a hybrid battery long before quite a lot of others were.
And it's fast and handles well. Not cheap though, but
Not cheap, but
a really really good car.
you'll get your money back for that car. I mean, that is a car that, you get cars that come into dealerships and before they're even cleaned and washed, they're gone again. And that is one of those
Yeah,
cars.
yeah, yeah.
All day long.
Yeah.
All day long.
So look, neither of us have chosen the Tucson, but no one will care because they're just going to keep buying them
It's yeah,
until the
exactly.
next one comes out.
I do like I've seen a few Tucsons in N line in black. And it does look good.
And I suppose it's recency bias in some cases that we say, okay, it's number one and there's loads of them and look at the new shiny thing.
Yeah.
But when people are going out to spend their own money, they keep going back and buying Tucsons.
Massive drop in the next segment. Only 1,500 units sold. The E segment, which now includes something like the 5 Series, the Audi A6, Mercedes E-Class, and the Kia EV6. Is that more because of a price it's in that segment, or like it's hard to compare an EV6 with an A6?
No, and you could say, well, why is the Kia EV6 not next to a Tesla Model 3 or BYD Seal? I have a friend of mine who's on a second EV6 and he would have been shopping
For those cars.
with those cars in mind. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, it's strange that the EV6 is in there, but the EV6 is a great success story. And I've said this to you before. I have a theory that I haven't proven yet that the EV6 is the EV that holds its value the best of any EV. I'm pretty sure that's true from countless hours trawling Dundee, but I think they hold their value incredibly well. So if you're worried about residual values in an EV, go buy a Kia EV6.
No offense, Dundee, but have you not got Netflix or anything that you could, be doing in the evening?
Yeah, well, I mean, everyone has their hobbies, but The classic car, vintage car section on Dundeal.ie
Ah,
is the one that
stop.
I spend the most on.
I will
I
say
mean,
this E segment is now dominated by electric. So yes, some of it is plug-in hybrid. I was behind a 530e only yesterday, but 35% in this segment is electric.
yeah, because it's taken the price down because the
Massively.
VRT
Yeah.
is, the lowest rate of VRT of cheap tax. And you're looking at cars that would have been probably 80, 90 grand are now starting to appear with the six in front of it.
Yeah, well,
That's it's
the
yeah, it's
5 Series was a queer one, as you'd say in Ireland. Like, even the 520i was put an M Sport pack in it, was about 70 grand. People are still, I think, hurt by the fact that you can't get a 520D in the UK or Ireland.
yeah, that was the
That was the car.
default
Oh,
setting. Yeah, that was it. That's all the car you ever needed for a while, wasn't it?
really was. And I think you used to get maybe not an M Sport, maybe an SE for low 50s, manual 6-speed box. Get your M Sport wheels on it, carbon black, look class.
What would you have in this segment?
I think the 5 Series.
I'm gone left field again.
Of course,
Apologies.
sure. Of course, sure.
Lexus ES. Lexus ES.
Yes, sorry. I literally only talked someone into buying one of these a few months ago. My old boss.
That's what I'd have. Oh,
Yeah.
it's a traditional luxury sedan, and it feels like a almost like a resto mod because it's a car that we would have had a few years ago, against a 5 Series or an E Class, but it's right up to date, and it's good value as well, relatively good value.
Relatively, I mean, a few years ago, it won't be as cheap now, but there was a time when I think Lexus sent out a kind of release about this, and compared to the A6 and the 5 Series, and possibly the E Class as well, their car was 51 grand, compared to the others, which were quite a bit more. Yeah, literally talked to them, and you know what? It wasn't really on their radar. And I said, "What about the Lexus?" And they were like, "Yeah, I like Lexus." And I said, "Well, why don't you try that?" And this person went from they had a year gap, but they went from an A8 PHEV to that Lexus, and are happy out. Now,
Yeah,
this
that's what I'd have.
the CVT gearbox in it, a little bit of an off-putting thing.
Yeah, but it's one of those cars you just stick in D and just
Cruise around.
go. You're not in a hurry. Listen to Lyric, Marty in the morning. And away you go.
Marty, by the way, for anyone who's not, Marty Whelan is a big car head. He
Oh, he
definitely
is,
has.
yeah.
He's an old MG. Uh, what is it? Yellow, I think. Um, I don't know what. Like, it's not his daily car, but he definitely likes cars.
I remember. Do you remember Drive magazine, which
Yes,
our friend of the show Neil Briscoe used to be the editor of? I think Marty Whelan was in it about 8 times with his, star in the car.
he's good value guest. Good value guest.
Himself and Ronnie Drew, pretty much. They were the ones who used to have the luxury cars in the 80s and 90s.
Right, we won't have to disagree to agree on that one, that segment anyway. So 5 Series and Lexus, large SUV, right? So this is where SUVs should actually have that title. A weird mix, up to almost 3,000 units sold so far this year. 5,008 falls into the same category as an X5. That a bit strange.
Okay, that is very strange.
So
Certainly not the same price anyway.
in order of sales, 5008 X5 Sorento from Kia, Santa Fe, which is essentially the same car, and the Volvo XC90, which I'm just going to come out straight now and say, Paddy, I'd buy the Volvo. Now,
And I would agree.
it is about 90 grand, but I'd still buy it.
Yeah, I would agree. The XC90 is it's one of those cars with a perfect image. I think large SUVs don't have great image, but I think you can get away with spending 90, 100 grand on one of these and not really pissing too many people off.
No, and they're safe, and everybody will be safe, and there is a statistic that I need to go and refresh my memory with, but pretty much as it goes,
I know the one you're going to say.
nobody has been
No
killed.
one in an
Passenger
XC90.
in an XC90.
Yeah, no, it's on their TV ad.
And I have it people saying, "Where'd you get that?" Like, they're hardly making it up. Like, it's Volvo.
But I remember, over the years, I've been to Volvo's crash center in Sweden, and I'm sure you've heard the stat as well. Is that in Sweden, when there's a Volvo involved in a crash, they take the car back to Volvo to analyze it and look at the real world data on the crash, and they really study to the nth degree what's happened in that car. And if you had the means, it's an expensive car, but if you had the means, what else would you want to put your family in
Mm.
than a car like that?
I know someone who's bought a used one, I think 3 years old recently, and they absolutely love it. And it still was strong money. And this was he was, again, kind of what we were talking about here. He came to me and said, what do you think of this versus that? Because the price of this is, 60 odd grand and it's a few years old. And I said, yeah, so just buy it. Just, it'll be fine.
Yeah, and you have to feel, and I'm basing this on no evidence at all. You feel like the person who buys the XC90 in the first place is probably going to service it well and mind it and take care of it. Yeah, there might be a few mashed bananas in the back seats, but generally you feel like they've serviced it well.
Mashed bananas and chocolate biscuits. Yeah, look, an X5 is obviously an honorary mention to that iconic SUV at this stage. I know someone who has a Mark 1 X5 with, I think, 50,000 miles on it, black. It's a 2001. I don't think he's ever going to part with it.
But yeah, they were revolutionary when they came out. People were like, "Whoa, what is this?"
Yeah.
It's like
This is an American thing.
an SUV that goes around corners.
Well, it's not the same category. It's €200,000 car, but just looking at it, because I saw one today, BMW XM, a car that was announced over the weekend, has sold even less than the Z4. That was no Z3.
Yeah, we saw the same thing. They're getting rid of it as well, I think.
But they've sold 200 in Ireland this year.
Because there a 50 as well than the M version.
Yeah. So look, the Santa Fe is impressive. It kind of looks mad at the back. Like, it has an ultraviolet cleaner for your stuff in the glove box. There's lots of clever touches in it. I think I'd rather not have my ultraviolet cleaner and have my Volvo. Thanks.
Perfect. We're coming towards, I suppose, the pointy end of the pyramid now at this stage.
So luxury
In
segment,
terms of numbers.
102 cars so far in the entire country for the luxury segment. Now, luxury by this definition is stuff like Panamera, S-Class, Taycan, 7 Series, Mercedes EQS. 81.
These must be EVs, are they?
Well, 81% of this segment is either PHEV or BEV. 81%.
I wonder how many of those people plug in
Well,
the PHEV.
I do know a few people that have Panameras and they've never plugged them in. Then I do know some people that did have them and did, because it was the only way to make the car work in terms of affordability for running it. I mean, even the S-Class can be plugged in now. It's a hybrid, but out of all them, look, I'm going to be a Porsche snob here, and the lucky position I'm in that I have a petrol Porsche. I couldn't justify buying a Taycan, and I think in that segment I think I'd go 7 Series. If we're talking i7 anyway.
If you want it to be luxury, and if you want it to be, opulence, because like a Panamera or the likes, okay, sporty and luxurious, but are we talking something that you'd like to sit in the back in now and again and waft? Then
No.
yeah, you got to be looking at the 7 Series or
the S-Class,
something, or the EQS.
Or the EQS.
Like, EQS is a car. It's a car I have a fondness for because myself and Blake Boland, friend of the show, were the first people to drive the length of Ireland on one charge in that car. A couple
remember
of years
that?
ago.
Yeah, even Today FM wanted to talk to you.
Yeah, they did. But that's an impressive car.
Yeah, that's
and
a car
hugely comfortable car.
That's a car that Enya could be transported around in. Equally, Enya could probably be transported in an S-Class or a 7 Series, but I don't think Enya would go around in a Taycan or a Panamera.
Definitely not.
I think that's judgment for that category.
Yeah, so you're going 7 Series?
Yeah, i7. Yeah, I mean, I've been in them in the Continent where it has the screen in the back and the seats are so comfortable, and it has this huge pillow for the back of your head, and the seats rise up and you can literally lie flat in that car. And as you said, it's meant for sitting in the back of. My brother's getting married in May, and BMW Ireland are very kindly giving me one for the week to do wedding duty stuff in, and it'll be perfect for that.
Well, I'm going to go EQS for nostalgic reasons and for the fact that it's just an amazing piece of kit. So yeah, that's what I'd have.
Did you share the driving with Blake with that, or did he do more? Were you the one being wafted?
Blake did more of it, and there was a reason for that, because when we started off in Cork, so we did Mizzen to Malin, and Blake did the first leg of the journey, and then I got in, and we quickly realized that when I drove, we weren't going to make it. So Because
This,
not that I'm particularly leaden-footed, but Blake is like some sort of EV ninja. So he was able to draw extraordinary if bits of economy out of that car.
you
And
see, like
if I had driven more, we would have failed.
I remember meeting these guys from the UK who were doing a challenge for tires for Bridgestone, and there was these guys like I drove to John O'Groats at 3 in the morning at like 20 miles an hour to extract every single kilometer out of an EV. Is Blake one of those kind of guys?
Yeah, he is, and it's just it's a gift, But we made that drive. We made that with about 20. Sorry, I think it was 17 kilometers left. I can't remember the videos on AA Ireland's YouTube channel, but we just about made it. And to be fair, Blake did the huge bulk of the second part of the journey. So yeah, we would have failed if it was me driving.
Good. And now he's driving buzzes. So whatever you did to him.
Yeah.
Finally, just on the performance stuff. So let's give an honourable mention to a case of if you build it, they will come. I don't have the previous figures for the M5 sales in Ireland, but you know what? I'm going to do it maybe for next week's podcast. I'm going to go back for the all model beyond and see how many we sold year on year. So far this year, the road tax of €170, the plug-in hybrid, the BMW M5 has sold 60 cars so far, and we're not even at the end of March yet.
How much is the M5?
So the M5 is less than the M4. There has been 0 M4s registered this year. So the M5, you could argue, has killed the M4. The price of it is it's 100 and...
It's about 150 grand.
No, less, way less. No, obviously you put on that.
Way less. It's because of the VRT.
No, well, yeah, because of VRT. But the that pack that the press car had was about €20,000, but that had carbon or was it ceramic discs? It had lots of other bits. No, the let me just search here while we are live and dangerous. M5 BMW website is very busy. Very busy indeed.
With people buying M5s by the look of things.
Clearly. Where the hell is this? Okay. M5 Saloon. Oh, there's the Touring. The Touring is not. It's only €2,000 extra for the Touring. Why would you not buy the Touring?
You'd have to.
€137,000. But it's 60 grand cheaper than the last M5.
So it's €8,220,000 worth of BMW M5s on Irish roads already.
Jesus, when you put it like that. And I'd love to know what the most popular colour is. I can probably find that out as well. Probably that blue, Portimao blue or whatever they're calling it these days. I liked it. Yes, it's heavy. They've put so much power into it just to compensate for it and make sure no one gives out about it, really, relatively speaking. I mean, look, you're going to put that performance pack on or whatever it's called if you have the means. But also, I'm sure it's still a fine car out of the box.
Yeah, looks stunning. Haven't driven it, but I'd imagine the weight doesn't really it's not like you're putting it on the scales. Does it feel heavy? Does it not do what you want it to do?
The only time I could really say that it felt heavy was when it would slide. Now it didn't have Michelin Pilot Sport tires on the press car for some reason. It had, I think, Hankook tires. There were a couple of roads. I wasn't going particularly fast, but they were a little bit wet, and yeah, it would slide relatively easily. But I think, like, I didn't drive it hard enough. You're quite conscious of really any press car, but certainly a car like that, you don't want to be the one who has to make the phone call to say, I'm after putting the back of this car into a wall or whatever. So I really wasn't driving it to that level, but I would imagine, like any M5, it can get you into trouble if you act them up in it.
Very few of the 60 units that are driving out there will ever be driven in furious anger because you really wouldn't want to. It's a lot of power.
It's a lot of power. You want to make bloody sure there's good tires on it, and yeah, just to be mindful of it. I have driven an M5 on a track, and that was a totally different experience. But also felt like one of the safest cars I've ever driven because of how quickly it could stop.
I do have a fondness though for the 5-litre V10.
Oh yeah,
that was an M5.
I'm sure there's a few of them in the vintage section of Dundee now if you go off and have a little look later on.
Yeah, Chris Harris has one. I've watched a couple of his YouTube videos, and I've also seen some of the repair bills that he's paid out. So he's a man of means, thankfully for him. But I wouldn't I wouldn't want to be scraping money from the back of the couch to buy a V10 M5. I think you wouldn't be driving it too long.
No. Try replacing that. Never mind how much does your EV cost to replace the battery? How much does that engine and that M5 cost?
A lot.
If you have to ask, you can't afford. Right. Well, look,
Exactly.
I hope we have helped in some way. I know we've gone through an awful long list of cars there. Whatever was relevant to you, maybe people skipped forward, jump back, whatever.
If you do have any questions, you can always write to us, driversrepublicpodcast@gmail.com. And we might we might round up a few questions and do a sort of a Q&A at some stage where we go through your choices and we give your opinion. How about that?
I think we're going to also have to find a price limit on Done Deal and find the best used car to buy for whatever, under 20 grand, or maybe engine size is irrelevant.
Yeah. And I just want people to stop putting cars in Done Deal for £1 or €1, please. Please,
Why do
don't
people
that.
do that? What's wrong with them?
It's so they appear at the
Top of the
lower
list.
end of the search.
Just pay for the extra ad that bumps you up the top, will you? Cheapskate.
There should be a rule that if you put it in as a euro, the fine is that you have to sell it for €1 to whoever pays.
On that note, go spend a penny, because this has been a particularly long episode of Drivers Public Podcast, but we do really appreciate you listening. Thank you very much for doing it. See you next week, Paddy.
Take care. Bye for now.